Hi, good morning. Well, so everyone can hear me. Like she said, I'm Will Baggett, here to discuss the first time actually speaking live in a while, so here we go. First, before we get too deep into this, does anyone work in digital forensics? Show of hands. One? Okay. We'll keep it at introductory level then. I'm Will Baggett. Used to work for the government. Did human collection, cyber collection, Director of Digital Forensics and Advanced Technology Use for Operation Safe Escape. We provide the domestic abuse victims a means to sever digital ties with their abusers. Sometimes it could be as simple as turning a switch up on the iPhone where you're sharing your iMessages where am I being located, or turning your Siri off on your iPhone, or even, and I don't need to start this speech, I really like this topic. I can go pretty deep into it, but just showing how simple it is to turn things off so you're not stalked and hacked. We do a lot of forensic work with that. I'm a cyber threat intelligence manager at a very well-known place. If I'd mentioned who I was, I'd have to get corporate concurrence, legal, and all that, and take several years, so we're not going to mention it. One bit of corporate advice is if you do work digital forensics, it's necessary for your mental health to rotate out, do something different because of what you see, whether it's fraud, theft, crime, murder, abuse, terrorism. It's not healthy to see that every day. So right now I'm doing cyber threat intelligence. There's an American sports coach, Nick Saban, and he says he won't discuss politics because half of his fan base is going to disagree with him, so he stays very neutral. When it comes to discussing US voting laws, elections, and voting machines, I'm taking the very same approach here because you need an impartial observer. Down here, I realize football is football, not soccer as we call it back in the US. We could all probably spend an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, day, 2 days discussing how a blown call by a biased referee cost our team a spot in the playoffs, whether it's NCAA football, whether it's World Cup, whether it's hockey. We've all seen that. So we've got to be accurate. So in digital forensics, when we're examining voting machines, we also want to be impartial, report what we see, report what we don't see. And the reason why, we didn't know this, we're working at DefCon, and when they say voting village, it's not, collection of houses and roads, they're not growing flowers out there, there's not chickens. It's a freaking conference room in a hotel suite. So you've got just a suite of random machines that have been purchased. People come in, they look at them, they start doing forensics, they see it on the news. Anyway, the conference report, as I start to examine this, 2.5 billion people read the forensic write-up and analysis of what we did after 2019. There was a lot of discussion, but there wasn't discussion about that we handled it improperly. That's a bit of a point of pride. And this hits home. We thought that one juror resilient ticket for an incident of one possible intrusion by Quackbot or a ransomware gang got 87 views on the corporate blog and the manager's happy. 2.5 billion people read this and didn't find fault. So that's not bad. We need to have impartiality. So enough of the legalese. Did I skip a step here? I believe I did. I just killed it. There we go. More legalese, sorry. So these voting machines, we go through a process where Harry Hurst, he's from Norway. He's working with the US government, also working for voting integrity groups. He'll buy the machines on secondary markets, government auctions in the US. He'll buy them from eBay. There's one that he purchased, we're going to talk later on about, the voting machine prototype from China, which seems absolutely bizarre, but there is a presidential candidate's family who wanted to help get more accurate voting results. So they put their name on the voting machine. Hari actually managed to get the device. We looked at that at DEF CON. That's what the bulk of this talk is about. None of the devices are procured illicitly. If we did find something that was improper and wanted to go forth with it, but it had been stolen, mislaid, however, as the legal term, the fruit of the poison tree, we couldn't do anything with it. Now, theoretically speaking, magic, right? Theoretically speaking, say you find the voting machines in use at DefCon at the loading dock, and you decide to prove that your candidate was robbed of the election, and you steal the voting machine in Vegas, where you've got security cameras every few feet walking your step from the front door to the loading dock, carrying this box out, and then a few minutes later you show up on the news of, oh, I found proof that this election was stolen. Well, there's all the facial recognitions. You've not proven your case was fraudulent. You've actually just committed a felony. Now you're going to jail. The FBI is not interested in you for being the national hero. You've just committed a pretty stupid crime. Not that that happened. That didn't happen in 2022 in August. Didn't happen at all, theoretically speaking. So everything we've done is above board. Machines, you can actually buy them on eBay if you want to, but why would you want to? Touch on that in a second. These things are, say, old. It's just, we'll see. So 2017, I left the government. I'm doing independent consulting. I'm in Las Vegas for digital recovery, e-discovery case. I have my full toolkit with me. And it's blacklight digital forensics kit for iOS, iPhone. It can do some Windows. I have Magnet Axiom. I have probably about $15,000, $20,000 of gear on me. You don't leave it in your hotel room. Even here at the conference, I've got my presentation laptop here because it's my freaking laptop. I don't want to lose it. Same thing in Vegas where crime is rampant, so I keep it with me. I was walking past the room. I saw, okay, here's these voting machines. I've got my kit. Of course, it's always the last day of the conference. I walked up to Hari and said, I have this equipment. Not many other people at Vegas, at DefCon had it out of the 30,000 attendees. He had a machine that hadn't been touched by other people, which is key for the forensic process. And I sat down and started examining it. Things got really familiar. The machine he gave me, it was about, I want to say 128 meg of a hard drive. It had been put in service in 2000, 2001. It is running unpatched Windows XP. The voting software itself was a 1997 Microsoft Access database. Hard drive was unencrypted, USB ports, no security on those whatsoever. So this is in 2017. This machine could drive. It could be in high school, be a senior. This is an old machine that's never been touched. That's good and that's bad. It's never been connected to the internet. It's only been used for one purpose. Is that unsecure? I don't know. Started looking, and the first thing I did was go to the log. So, they tell me this machine's never connected to the internet, but there's an FTP log. You can see there, WS_FTP log. So I pull strings, and I can see that the files have been sent, the Access database files have been transmitted to ftp@infocom.com. That's interesting for a machine that never connects to the internet. Where are these files going? So like a bad episode of American reality TV, I phoned a friend. He's no longer there now, but he worked at CNN as a researcher. We looked up Infocom, or he did. Bandwidth there is terrible because they don't want you on your phones in Vegas. They want you downstairs playing slot machines. They want you gambling. They want you drinking and partying, spending money, not just sitting in your room scrolling on TikTok or whatever. So cell service is terrible. My friend sends me this back. Infocom's a company based out of Canada. Here's their IP address. Here's all about them, but they don't mention they have anything to do with the voting system. This is pretty interesting. I get Hari, the manager, the leader of the voting village, the room supervisor, and this ends up going in the congressional report on the conference, ends up going in New York Post. So there I am going, just working with an entertainment company. They didn't pay me. I'm not bitter about that. Working for an entertainment company to being interviewed by the New York Post for digital forensics. I wasn't expecting that. So the next year, we realized, okay, this got a lot of attention. This could go badly if we don't do this right. We actually put a process in. I don't like process, even though I've had a career in government. I don't like process, all that. I'm more of not a government employee, really. So we worked out a workflow. Terrible grammar, I'm sorry. We had examined the machines before the general public would come in. They brought in scribes to document this from Georgetown Law, undergraduate students looking to work in government policy space. We had very formal handling procedures on the machines. I'll show you why in a minute. Now, you've seen this part of it on the news. The other part of what we did with the Infocom log, that wasn't on the news. Our process, just like any other digital forensic process, collection, examination, analysis, and reporting. And from that, we pivot back to see, here's what we found. What did we miss on the other machines? Carsten Schumer, he's a name dropping to give him recognition. A university professor from Copenhagen was here. He found that on the raw base image of the WinVote machines, there is an MP3 from China where the voting machines were manufactured. He recovered the MP3 of that Chinese machine. We didn't find it anywhere else on the other machines, but we now had a pivot to say, okay, this is the anomaly. Is it been replicated? The machines are from dozens of states. It wasn't just one machine out of one precinct. And we'll see this here. But the principle, the perpetrator will bring something into a crime scene and leave with something from it, generally. So there was, and I feel it's part of this, but I feel ridiculous saying it. There was a conspiracy going around that there was a satellite controlled by the Italians that had read-write access to voting machines, and that's how they were changing votes. Y'all, there is no chip in a Windows XP from 2000 that has satellite comms with the Italians. That's just not even freaking possible. But people get spun up and believe this. So you would actually see where the software was installed. You'd see the physical chip. The conspiracy theories fall apart. It's an old Windows machine. So if someone comes in to upload software, you're going to have the date timestamp of when the USB drive was inserted. You're going to have the the software, malware, spyware, ransomware, whatever you want to call it. You're going to see where that's uploaded. That's not there. Even on the Apple iOS side, every file on the fork tree is numbered, so you can see if file number here, this one's missing, and there's that. Well, what's missing? There's software you can undelete files, or you can find why is this file missing. First pillar of forensic processing: you don't change the evidence. To be blunt, that the whole justice system falls apart if the law enforcement agency can change the evidence to make it read what they need it to for their case. Also, going back, you don't upload pictures of Rick Astley and have the Rickroll video and claim that was on it. That's easy to show as well. People would do that. If you have to examine this device, you have to be competent either through experience, through training, whether it's through a SANS training course, whether it's through vendor training course, corporate training. There has to be some modicum of training on this, and you have to stay current. Before the pandemic, we called it dead box forensics. You would get a USB drive in the mail, you would get a hard drive in the mail, or you'd fly out. I missed that. You'd fly out to go image the device on site to see what the hardware, software issues were, and fly back to your lab to go look at the evidence. Now, with modern software, you can actually have endpoint, whether it's CrowdStrike or Druva, remotely access the machine, pull the registry, and look to see what's changed. But you have to know what you're doing and be trained well with this. Otherwise, it's just code. There needs to be an audit trail of what's happened. So we imaged this device. I validated the hash. Everything is copacetic. You need to be able to say, if you're on the prosecution team, the defense should be able to replicate the evidence you have there to prove, yes, this came down. A good example, going back to Operation Safe Escape, is whether it's Google Takeout or whether it's Apple's data recovery, where you have all your iMessages or all your Google data. Literally, Google Takeout keeps everything. As much as I hate that from a libertarian privacy point of view, that's fantastic because it shows, my client received these harassing text messages from this number that can be downloaded from Google. That's an authoritative source, as opposed to, here's a printout of a screenshot that can easily be photoshopped and manipulated. That's a big thing on Twitter to have funny exchanges, or Reddit's anti-work or know your boss. Of all the things that never happened, this never happened the most. But pulling the chat logs down from Apple, Google, and having the opposition look at it, or the work we're doing at the Voting Village to see where everything matches up, it's authentic, that's the goal we need. Lastly, the person in charge of the investigation, whether it's Hari Hurst overlooking the entire Voting Village or whether it was me running the forensic effort, we have responsibility to make sure that, okay, this device we're going to image has just been returned by this group of attendees who are examining it. Well, that's not following proper handling procedures. They can have it, they can look at it, what we need it for is no longer valid. So we would arrive at DefCon early before the crowds enter the Voting Village. We would image the device. I would image it, make a copy. Another person to image it, make a copy, would validate the hash codes to make sure that these are accurate. The hash codes, y'all familiar with hash codes? Yes, no, maybe, I don't know. It's a digital signature of the file, and it's fairly impossible on higher level hashes to have identical. It's like having identical grains of sand from the beach. It's just not going to happen. As long as these are identical, the copy I'm working with, you're working with, and you're working with are all the same, our results should be similar. We only work on copies of the backup. So if we did find something that was truly damning, the original's off to the side, another backup is here, working on third and fourth versions of the copies just in case, because you never know what you're going to find. So the processing, again, this is vendor agnostic, because as the military says, 2 is 1, 1 is none. I've had cases where I'd image the hard drive, the phone with blacklight, and then image it with Axiom and then Paraben, and then run a $79 tool just on a lark from the Apple store and find recovered text messages that the big programs didn't recover. So unless you've given it a better picture, you don't know what evidence you're missing if you're only using one tool. The better vendors will tell you validate our results with another tool. Large corporations would say, we have one tool, that's all we're paying for. That's the one you don't want to work for, because if you can't validate the accuracy of your work, you don't need to sign that document legally to say, I put my name, my reputation on the line saying this is accurate, if I can't validate it. We would do 3 things. We'd write a DMG file on a Mac. If this was when I was teaching cyber issues to NATO Special Forces, we would stop here. We'd actually go through the steps on how to create a DMG file on a Mac, a virtual hard drive in Windows, of course, copying external media. That I think that's probably going away now. It seems like external media is vanishing. But we would do this, that way we can copy the containers to the media and then have it shared easily, whether you're in the war zone sharing the files or just sharing it at DefCon. It's a good standard practice. Everything is made in a read-only format. We used these tools, Autopsy, Blacklight, and Magnet Axiom for data analysis. We'd use Blacklight's Macquisition, FTK Imager to acquire the files, to image it, and Redripper to go through the registry to see the last files open, what's been loaded that we're unaware of. And Disk Drill is a fairly inexpensive program. It does file undeletions. It's recovered better data than a lot of the 5-figure programs. So here you can see we're actually using Blacklight before they're purchased by Cellebrite, and they went from $700 a year of a license to $30,000. It's not worth it. I don't think y'all are watching, but it's not worth it. So we would copy it. And this is why we had the hard standards and controls. This is what you see on the news, CNN, Fox News, CNBC, BBC, whatever. Ooh, wow, they hacked it. No, you didn't freaking hack it. You copied Rick Astley from your thumb drive and put it on a machine. That's not hacking. That's Control-C, that's Control-V, that's more threat intel. I shouldn't say that either. That's why we have standards and controls. After we'd image it, this is what Disk Drill looks like. It shows all the deleted files. We look and see if there's anything unique in there. One of the common things now from NIST.gov is they have salt files you can go through. They've collected all the common files for the operating systems, the hash values, so you can remove the known good files and only look at the anomalies. And this is also why we have to do it properly. This is the end result. They didn't look at how the sausage is being made. They didn't look at the forensic evidence. They didn't look at the proper handling procedures, all the glorious computer science we were doing. They went for the meme, which, okay, whatever. A friend sent me the screenshot that we actually made the last DefCon before COVID hit. We actually ended up there. This is why we have hard rules. Going through this a little bit, you can see we actually have to crack the hard drive apart. These are not machines I mentioned earlier, theoretically, that if you're going to take one and walk through a casino, you're not smuggling this in your backpack. That's a huge machine. Also, imaging takes a while, so I think 2 iced coffees and a Mountain Dew Express with extra caffeine to try to stay awake through the process. This looks like it came out of the set of Mandalorian or 1977 Star Wars on a Sandcrawler. Call it what is. This is still in use in Iowa, by the way. It has a 10 horsepower motor to pull the paper. Why you need that much horsepower to pull sheets of paper for dot matrix experiment, I don't know, but that's what they've got. You have a waterproof port for DHCD programming. Why? I don't know. The entire hard drive is written in the operating system is written in a variant of a BlackBerry operating system, all clear text. So again, once you actually found the adapter to go zip disk to something you could actually read, wasn't too bad, but finding these esoteric parts, you feel like you're going back in time. Most of them rely on compact flash cards. The Windows machines you've heard about a lot in the news. The data's written here. So this is it. This is what people say has been hacked. It's a flash card. When's the last time? Are any of y'all still using compact flash cards? No? And beyond compact flash cards, there were just flash cards, which are different. If you put a compact flash card in a flash card reader, you're going to destroy the reader. Source, trust me. There used to be a large electronics store in Vegas, Fry's, before Amazon killed it. We'd have a shuttle going from DefCon to Fry's to pick up the parts we need for these ancient machines. So this is another Windows XP NT system running on a compact flash card that we would image. Putting your school sticker on a laptop on a voting machine is also not hacking, by the way. It's vandalism, especially for a South Carolina sticker. Things that we found after we imaged. The machine username and password, because of sunshine law in the United States, those are available online. The admin name and password for the machines, those are available online. This is compliance with state law. I don't think I agree with that one. So the altered files, after we imaged that device with the little honey bear and the big cry and the DefCon logo, it still ran. Again, hard to break the old habit of being an instructor. If we had laptops in front of you, I'd say pick a state, pick a country, find the voting machine used in the state, locate the username password for the machine. Is that hacking or is that just OSINT? So this bad boy, the premier voting machine, after we imaged it, we turned it on. We actually wanted to see what we're working with. The 2 Google searches, we found the username password, the security name and password. I've got a pretty good memory. I'm not capable of memorizing the hash value for every single file on the machine. That, I wouldn't be here, I wouldn't be in Vegas, I'd be on Wall Street. Actually, I'd probably own the island. That would be something phenomenal, to be able to memorize things like that and track trends. The premier voting machine prints 56 pages of hash values for every, you can't download it, it prints. How you're going to validate, there's no virus, there's no malware. So we ran an experiment. We got the scribe over from Georgetown. We validated what we were going to do. We copied the logon user ID, the file. Change it, put my friend's avatar from his website. It loads. You get a warning that something has changed. So there is a hash validation of the file. There is some tamper detection. We were surprised to see that. This is what made CNN. This is what made Fox News. Not that hard work. Okay. The Chinese voting machine. This came up because of COVID. I don't know if y'all heard, but there's a virus from 2021 to like the end of time that stopped a lot of things. So the first true voting machine village we had was in 2022, last year, after the pause. The voting machine itself, we'll talk about this, is $7,000. It's 150 pounds. You think about the poll workers who set up the voting machines. They're usually elderly, retired. Maneuvering a 150-pound behemoth for one machine is tough. Doing that to set up an entire room, good luck with that. So this is the prototype that a political family is endorsing. We actually found the specs online. We're concerned about data security and people hacking into it, so this one has a camera, so they can watch you as you print for facial recognition. It scans your driver's license, your ID card to make sure it's truly you. A fingerprint reader has Bluetooth, 4G, and Wi-Fi, and speakers. Why? I'm not voting to listen to music. I'm not listening to Jimmy Buffett and the Island Band. I just want to freaking vote and go home. I believe the phrase is insecure, possibly. So you actually have the machine here from their website. Does the idea of having facial recognition, fingerprint capture, and your ID captured when you vote, does that make anyone feel warm and fuzzy? Does that seem, and have Bluetooth and cell service connection to it? So as much as I don't like having a Windows XP box that I might be voting on, it's still a little bit better than knowing this device is on. I don't know who's accessing it while voting's occurring. So where do you get the device manual from for this? Through the chat channel through Alibaba, the manufacturer would know your precinct voted this machine. They would send you a PDF where you get your software updates, direct custom patches and updates for you. There's no open source validation from the community. There's no examination. It's just, here's a file just for you. No one else can look at it. From China, one of our adversaries. This doesn't seem like a positive step. I don't know. I've only been doing cybersecurity for a few years. So we actually got the device. We had to discuss with the unions. We had to get several people, a hand truck. This is the device as it arrives in the voting machine village. You can see this thing is not small, 150 pounds. It arrived, we got it cleared because we're not allowed to actually move the material because of rules and regulations. We get it. And that night, we have to leave the room again, rules and regulations, fire marshal code. So we had to leave it. So we wanted to do something called trapping. Anyone familiar with that term? It's like a honeypot token. I took video of this. I can't pause it. Can you play the video, please? Thank you. We took note of all the unique locations where things come together on the video, where the metal tape comes together. I took note of it. We didn't advertise it. We didn't discuss it. We noted where the hinges were. That way, if the machine had been opened overnight and broke the seal, literally the seal, the chain of custody, we would know the machine had been altered overnight before we could come back into the room. We used a high-speed, low-drag tool to open the box. And then we get this thing. First thing we did, because it is DefCon, we don't have 100% chain of custody, 100% control of our environment. We removed the power cord. We want to make sure this machine is accurate. It's a $7,000 machine. It's a beast. It came from China. So remove the power cord, covered that with a sticker so someone couldn't just plug it in to see what it does, thereby invalidating the results. Most of the machine actually sits on a repository where the paper ballots are printed and stored. So if you've ever submitted a corporate expense receipt report and the thermal printer, you know how great those are. After about a week, they're blank, they're white, right? You can't read them, you can't use them. You have to go back to the vendor, get another one to try to get reimbursed. That's what all the votes are printed on, is thermal paper. We open the box up. Man, I'm sorry. Can I ask you to play this again? There are 2 printer rolls. If the printer rolls run out of paper, the machine's completely offline. And of course, someone wants to help by unplugging everything before we can document it. That's not helping. That's making it worse. That's making it much worse. So you can see this is not a standard machine. This isn't your traditional computer that you're getting. We saw that, okay, this could be a problem. We're also, the group of us were experienced and, I don't want to say mature, I don't like that word, but experienced enough to know there's examining and tinkering. We went further, we would tinker. One person had a fantastic idea. He took a photo of the unknown circuit board, ran it through Google image searches, Yandex, and TinEye to see if there's any other circuit board like it. We found identical ones as an Android board, and we checked there were no visible anomalies on the board. It looked like this should be what the circuit board should be. There's nothing special there. In the same conference hall, there's the Internet of Things where they do drones, the different sensors, the Alexas, all that good stuff. I walked over and said, we have this. We don't have the equipment to image it. Can you help? Of course, they loved the chance. They did a chip-off extraction, meaning they put leads on the circuit board, cloned the device. It was slow, it took overnight. We actually had to hide the machine, keep it from being touched while this imaging occurred overnight. 123.8 gigabyte file. It doesn't seem like that big until you're sending to someone. It's massive. Again, going back to instructor mode, I brought my right blocker toolkit with me in the yellow Pelican case. And I realized the entire case relied on a USB 3.0 Type A to Type B cable. Without that one specific cable, everything else out there didn't work. And when TSA was inspecting my luggage, that cable got crushed. They were able to rebuild it, the Internet of Things. But point here, maybe not so much for voting machines, but forensics in general. If you have limited access to a targeted device, plan for the worst, assume it's going to fail, assume you're going to need to use your backup. So again, I would say your tax dollars, I'm out of the country. Your tax dollars taught me this. Your primary image, alternate image, so if the one image, 123.8 file fails, we have a backup. And not only do I have a backup, I gave a copy to Hari, a copy to someone else. So if my plane, hate to say it, went down, I wasn't single threaded. I didn't have the only copy. 2 other people on 2 different planes had it just in case because we didn't know what we were working with. The media is unreliable. The higher the case sensitivity, the more high-level attention you have, the greater the chance it's going to die. And of course, my mandatory Star Wars quote, would you like to know the odds of failure? They're high, very high. So we finally get the image. We don't know what we have. First thing I do is connect it through a right blocker after I've cloned my 4 images of it. And I use grep in Linux to see, okay, what version it is, and we see what flavor of Linux is running. Now I can pivot from that, and in my tool, I can go to nist.gov, download the Android files that are known and good, and then remove those from my forensic processing. This is a dope scope. Feel weird saying that again, out of the country. It has nothing to do with dope. It's just a cool little name, that wardollar.com. It's a defense contractor in Virginia. It's a Kali Linux monocle, so you can look to see the Wi-Fi addresses, the Bluetooth networks. So when you're doing an on-site inspection, whether you're doing red team, whether you're doing sensitive site exploitation, drug raid, whatever, you can look to see all the different networks. Oh, there's actually an Apple backup server stored in the storage vent, and we can see it's emanating here through this MAC ID that's not being picked up anywhere else. Neat gadget, didn't need it, bought it anyway. But we use this to see, is this activate the Wi-Fi on the voting machine? What network is this creating? Same for the Bluetooth. So the bottom line, we didn't find the dozens of machines we investigated over 5 years, no foreign interference, no domestic interference, bad foreign design. The Chinese voting machine, I wouldn't trust for anything the way it's designed right now. We haven't found malware. There's no security updates. There's no internet connectivity. And it's such a diverse mesh of devices that you wouldn't have a single point of failure like when Facebook's their border guard files were corrupted. They lost their DNS entry and Facebook went offline about a year ago. They thought it was tied to Russia, Ukraine, I believe. There's no failure because there's such a mismatch of machines. Even if one voting precinct was corrupted, it wouldn't affect the entire nation. That's a good thing. Thing I definitely didn't care for, there's no encryption of output. All the voting machine files are written to vote.txt on a removable USB drive. I have heartache with that. Everyone votes on the admin account. I also have a problem with that. The USB drives are accessible. You can see where every time a mouse and a keyboard have been connected or monitor, you can see just the logs. However, in the voting machine area, you've got a poll watcher, you're on site, you don't have time to pull USB drive out, load it, reboot the machine, load your malware, and get off the X before people have noticed that you've done something malicious. It's just not, I don't want to say it's technically possible, but it's not humanly possible because the chances of being caught doing a level of espionage like that are very high. That would be a nation state incident, a lot of blowback. The probability is very small. The greater threat is the no encryption of output. So if, no offense, if I give you the USB drive from the voting precinct, you don't like how they look, you stop on the side of the road, you have one of the, just have your laptop, you 51 votes for candidate A, 49 for B. Well, we're going to change that, 100 for A, 0 for B. There's no stopgap measure to have that corruption. So I'll get a little bit ahead of myself. If you have just something as simple as a lock bag from a bank, they're $11 from Amazon, put the voting drives in there, the USB drives, lock it, give the key to a deputy. Party A is in the backseat of the sheriff's car, party B is in the backseat. You have 3 sets of eyes watching the locked envelope. It's technically encrypted. I mean, it's not accessed. So you know you've got a good output from the voting precinct to the headquarters where they tally the votes together. That would actually be far better and a very low-cost win for a lot of local governments. Again, no firewall, no antivirus programs, no audit trail. We didn't find any voter information on this. That was a good find. But again, these machines are so old, we don't see any tampering with them because writing exploit for a Windows XP, a Windows 98 machine, good luck with that. Another thing, if you have a software that was the hammer and sickle or something like that they claimed is on the voting machines that can remotely influence elections, if you have something like that, you're not going to have that on 100 machines in a classroom at a church where you pull them out once every 2 years because somebody could find the evidence that there's something corrupt on there. And again, that software, if it's removed, you're going to find it's been removed through forensic programs, so that's also not realistic. So the short version, we haven't found evidence of voting machine tampering. We also don't touch the voting rolls. We don't touch the validation of the ID. We don't touch that process. We don't touch what happens after. We only look at the machine itself. They're old, but it's working. They're probably vulnerable to every CVE from 2000 to today, but if they're not connected to the internet and they're only used for voting, doesn't matter. So this actually flew by. Any questions? Yes. Could you repeat that on a microphone, please?
I just had curiosities about the FTP logs that were identified.
Okay.
from earlier in the presentation. Could you just elaborate kind of on the context of that and the background a little bit more?
It was a log file. Looking at a new machine to the village that had been untouched by anyone. They said the machines had never been connected to the internet ever. Ever is a big word. So when looking at the logs with the time crunch, we saw that the machine had been connected at some point to the internet, maybe when it was being maybe when it was being cloned for creation. But we did see that it had been connected and sent files to the FTP server in Canada. Why, we don't know. But we'd seen that replicate as we pivoted from that, okay, we have this WSFTP log on this machine. We start looking and see that on multiples of the same WinVote machine. So we think it was just the setup. However, it was still violates the all. If the manufacturer had said it was connected to the internet being set up, being imaged, being cloned, okay, yeah, that happens. When you're creating that many drives at once, that's an understandable thing, and never connected ever since, okay. But it was that use of the term, legal term, ever. That's what raised the red flag for us.
Absolutely, thank you.
All right.
You guys aren't a very talkative bunch, so I'm just going to fill in for you. So I've seen how complex our government's procurement process is here, rightfully so.
Right.
It's a small community, and lots of inbuilt mechanisms to make sure that the right protocols are followed and things. So how do you know how decisions are made in local, state, county, federal government as to how these machines are obtained? And I'd say this in 2008, I helped with my dad's election campaign in Montana. So I got to see a lot of that side of it. And the machines that were used then were kind of like what we used to take the Iowa basics, like a fill-in circle kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that there's like lots of trade-offs being made about like efficiency and accuracy and, overvotes and all these things that figure into it. Is there protocol? Is it just like the city council saying we're going to get this one? Or
it comes down to budget. Once you have the main vendor, you stick with them. Another piece, thank you for reminding me, is the vendors charge per software update per machine. So it becomes cost prohibitive for them to, even if they want to load the latest service patch, that cost escalates to where the local government can't afford it. I'm not saying nationalize it, but there's a definite issue there. Budget. It's always budget.
Actually, I was interested into digital forensics, just kind of getting into it. I was wondering if you had any suggestions on the tools, standards, or just general education that I could pursue.
I'm not paid by them. It's a free course. Charles Stewart, STURT University out of Australia, has free online master's certifications. So you can take a digital forensic master's cert in that. It's restore recording. Okay, your connection's broken, don't listen at home. It's 4 tests, open book tests, but it's good material. So it's 4 90-minute classes. It's a good way to get your foot in the door to say, now you've got an overview of what it is. Good software program would be for imaging would be go to Magnet Access or Magnets. They make it cutesy names, but magnetforensic.com has a good imaging tool as well as FTK's imaging tool. And then it's kludgy, but Autopsy is a freeware open source community tool that's a good entry level point for digital. It's what we taught over at NATO. Because some countries shouldn't, because how I feel about pricing, but some countries don't want to spend $30,000 per license per examiner. Other countries do have the funds, so we settled on autopsy. It's a free one. You can build it to make it what you want, but it wouldn't hold up in a court of law because it's so customizable. However, to understand how things work, okay, if you understand the basics, then you can understand the push button forensics of loading the device, get your output, and just scroll through for whatever PDF. So bottom line, Charles Stewart, ST York University, that'll get you a master's cert. It's a very easy cert. And then I'll open the door to, you need the two pieces of the acquisition tool and then need autopsy tool.
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Another thing to look at, not to monologue here, would look at Druva, D-R-U-V-A. It's more of what we used at some of the corporate engagements where you connect to the endpoint. You can actually pull down the key files. So if somebody was manipulating, not that anyone would ever do it during the pandemic, but manipulate a receipt for visiting a doctor's office and providing $80 of pastries as an office visit to $800 in embezzling money. That's something you could find quickly through instead of imaging the entire hard drive from the user's computer. Not that anybody would ever commit stupid fraud like that working for a pharmaceutical company during the pandemic, but don't deal with stupid stuff. Thank you.